Like, it'll just be the same thing. They write some songs, they hang out with Kevin Shirley, they record the songs, they go on tour, the album comes out, big whoop, right? Hello and welcome to Maiden Voyages, a podcast devoted to exploring the peerless discography of the world's greatest heavy metal band. If you don't know it by now, it is, of course, Iron Maiden.
Who has got this far in the series and doesn't know what this is about?
Guess who?
Or who has clicked this link?
Well, indeed. So we are going to be journeying through the band's entire discography, discussing, analysing, dissecting, celebrating, and maybe even commiserating every single Iron Maiden record. So this episode, we find ourselves in 2003 to explore Iron Maiden's macabre 13th album.
I see where you did that.
Dance of Death. But first, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Blev, an historian of sorts, and I am an Iron Maiden champion. As in, I champion Iron Maiden.
Okay. I'm Sam, a writer of sorts, and I am an Iron Maiden... I was going to say bronze medalist before you clarified what you meant by champion. Supporter?
Supporter, yeah, that sounds about right.
I'm in the stands with like a little flag and an Iron Maiden scarf.
Whereas I'm just there. I am like the mascot on the side of the pitch. Full Eddie costume.
Or the football hooligan.
Or the football hooligan. Just
starting fights with like Judas Priest fans.
Yeah. It's a new series, technically, Sam.
No, it isn't.
Isn't it?
No, we're already on series 4.
Are we?
Yeah, we did. We did a couple of episodes. Then I got ill for ages, and now we're resuming.
So Brave New World was series 4?
No, Brave New World was the previous series, but we began series 4 with like a palate cleansing episode. Then we did 2 interviews.
Okay.
And then we lost all momentum. By being ill for 6 weeks.
Because you're dying, aren't you, Sam?
Well, I'm not actually dying. That's a very bleak thing to put in.
I was a bit worried that the rest of the series would just be me recording this as voice memos on my phone because I can't do the technology. Doing your
voice memos that don't even go up on like Podbean and Spotify because you don't know how.
But to reassure the listener, you're almost back at full health.
Yeah. It turns out having a small child go to nursery means that you've introduced a vector of disease into your household.
Yeah.
And so you spend all of your time swapping various viruses between all of the family. So thanks to tonsillitis, ear infections, I've missed doing this podcast. I've missed seeing Ghost, and seeing Employed to Serve and seeing Love Hate. So I'm not bitter. It's fine.
You're a fighter, Sam.
Am I?
Wow.
I'm more of a keel over and give up kind of guy.
He's a survivor of sorts.
Survivor, but not by choice.
So this is the first album episode of the new series?
Yes, this is the first proper episode. Not proper. We did some good episodes, but first traditional episode. Let's go with that.
And is this the last series?
Well, I'm not sure that's a conversation for on air.
No,
but theoretically, we've got some ideas about what to do when we run out of studio albums for Iron Maiden. There's a lot of solo albums. There's a lot of spin-off albums.
But the point is we are running out of Iron Maiden now.
We are running out of Iron Maiden now.
We're into the final run of
the studio. Yeah,
Maiden happened to put.
But I've really enjoyed the last 2 episodes where we've been talking to actual other musicians about the impact Iron Maiden's had on them. And that's hopefully something we could do more of.
Indeed, yeah. So stay tuned.
On that note of suspense for you.
So, Dance of Death, Sam.
Yeah.
Now, what's weird about this is, at this point, this is where we are no longer reflecting on things that happened before we became aware of it.
This is our lives.
Bro. Yeah, like this is now where the history and our contemporary memories of this come into being. So I'm going to ask you, when did you first hear this album? I mean, I obviously know the answer to this, but...
I heard it in 2004.
Yeah.
So after it came out, after everyone that I knew had seen Maiden on the Dance of Death tour, so I was a bit behind on the Maiden discovery there. But yeah, it was the joint first album of Maiden I heard. I think Dance of Death itself is probably one of the very first Maiden songs I ever heard.
Didn't I lend it to you?
No.
Didn't I? Wasn't it on
No.
the Battlefield strip?
No, you didn't lend me Dance of Death. You
okay.
lent me the No More Lies single.
Oh, yeah.
And I already knew a couple of songs off the album. And then I was so jealous of your Iron Maiden sweatband that came with No More Lies EP
Sweatband.
that on this school trip of ours to World War One battlefields, like the posh, privately educated children that we are, in Belgium, I then went and bought the No More Lies EP in a CD shop somewhere there.
Nice.
Along with Appetite for Destruction, which I had been borrowing from you all week and became obsessed with.
It was a good day for 14-year-old Sam.
It was a good day, yeah.
But yes.
Basically, my tastes haven't changed since then.
But yeah, for me, this was the first Maiden album. I was properly excited for it coming out. Brought it on the day of release. I want to say in W.H. Smith's in Monmouth. I definitely bought the Wildest Dream single, which came out a few weeks before, in the W.H. Smith's in Monmouth.
Nice. I don't think I ever bought music from the W.H. Smith. I bought a lot of music from the Woolworths in Monmouth.
Yeah.
Including the Trooper single at some point.
Yeah, weirdly, Smiths at that time seemed to be better for new music. I found like Woolworths was quite good for your £5 bargain.
Yeah.
Like you could pick up. I
got Pearl Jam's 10 from Woolworths.
It's lucky everyone who listens to this is presumably over the age of 30, because otherwise the chat about Woolworths and like CDs from Smiths is totally...
Yeah.
And to any foreign listeners we have, Smiths is a British stationery store.
Well, no, it's meant to be a bookshop.
Well, yeah, a stationery store come bookshop that weirdly used to sell music and DVDs, but no longer does.
Also used to sell video games for a bit.
Yeah. I mean, now it just seems to not...
Well, now it's like on the verge of bankruptcy.
Yeah, pretty much.
Whereas Woolworths did go bankrupt.
Indeed. Britain in 2025.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for me, this was like my first... kind of, I'm there, I'm waiting, I'm actually counting down the days for this album to come out. I got the singles, the Stream single beforehand, getting it in the shop.
Yeah.
Very exciting moment indeed.
That is very exciting.
So, before we get into the background, it's time for Because Be Dead, Sam.
All right. I might stand a chance for once. I probably won't.
No, you won't with these, actually, because I've...
I've made them deliberately hard.
Yeah, I've made them deliberately hard, because actually, otherwise... It was quite difficult, because it's also maybe worth pointing out at this point, we're now into a post-Mick Wall world, by which I mean my research has been heavily based on Mick Wall's interesting for a variety of reasons, biography of Maiden, the official biography that's now since long out of print, Run to the Hills.
Yeah.
The edition I have finishes after Brave New World. There was a second edition that did cover Dance of Death, but I'm not buying.
This is a real peek behind the curtain of how you prep for these episodes. What I do is I read one single source and I've just read it in my own words for 30-odd episodes.
I collate multiple sources.
Sure you do.
The Mick Wall book is an useful reference point. And now, we say goodbye to Mick Wall.
Bye.
Bye, Mick. Thanks for all the facts. So we're going it alone. So here's my quiz. Shortly before the release of Dance of Death, Iron Maiden released the Visions of the Beast DVD.
Yeah.
But what are the Easter eggs on that DVD?
I don't know. A preview for Ed Hunter.
Well, that wouldn't even work, would it?
Shut up.
Ed Hunter had already been out for about 4 years.
I don't care.
So
the only thing I know about the Visions of the Beast DVD is the front cover being like mostly black and then like has a poor CGI Eddie.
Yeah, like a sort of chrome Eddie.
Yeah.
Or more on that later. But the Easter eggs were something called, and I have this DVD, Man on the Edge fun version.
Fun version?
Whatever that is. I don't remember watching that. And The Trooper, the Camp Chaos version. Do you remember those?
Oh, the really bad animated ones.
Really bad.
Yeah, where they just replaced all of the film footage with
bad animation.
What's it? Like Flash style animation.
Yeah.
For those of you who are on the internet in the early noughties, where like everything like on Newgrounds and stuff was animated with that sort of tween rotating animation called Flash.
That aged very quickly.
It did age.
And it's probably even aging by 2003 when this came out. But anyway, it's question 2. So no points.
No point.
The song Passchendaele features a quotation from which poem? I'll tell you the line as well. The line I'm referring to is "Cruelty has a human heart," which is a great line, isn't it?
That is a great
Cruelty has
line.
human heart. Bruce or Steve didn't write that. It's from a poem.
It's been plagiarized.
Yes. Let's not go down that road. Go back to the Number of the Beast episode if you want to hear that chat.
Yeah. I have no clue.
It's okay. I'll give you. You might get the poet. It's a poet that Bruce Dickinson is very.
William Blake.
Yes. Okay, so it's from a Blake poem.
Is that the
Blake poem.
only cultural reference Bruce Dickinson has?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, there's a lot of Blake.
Like Blake's art, Blake's poetry.
Okay.
Anyone else? Nah.
No. So yeah, it's from a poem called "A Divine Image" by William Blake.
Okay.
Okay, another poetry-themed question.
Oh, joy.
So when Iron Maiden played Passchendaele live on the Dance of Death tour,
Yeah.
Bruce introduced the song by reading a part of which poem? Okay, I'll give you a line from the poem.
My God.
So the opening line of the poem, I mean, just Sam, see, this isn't even my notes, right? I'm just showing off how cultured I am and how much I've listened to the Death on the Road live album.
Sure. Yeah.
The opening line is, "What passing bells toll for these men who die like cattle." I probably butchered that now, actually.
Charge of the Light Brigade.
It's "Anthem for Doomed Youth" by Wilfred Owen.
Never even heard of it.
What, you never heard of Wilfred Owen?
No, I've heard of Wilfred Owen. I've never heard of the poem.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm not hot on poetry.
No.
It's not one of my areas.
Don't like your First World War poets? You see Pizza Soons?
I could talk to you about like
Thomas's.
futurism as an art movement, but I couldn't talk to you about poetry.
Okay. Cool.
That's about as cultured as I am.
Well, another disappointing opening quiz for Sam. But let's see if he can shine later on through his
If I have any
scintillating
opportunity.
takes on
Great,
Dance
great.
of Death. So let's go straight into the background. So Brave New World comes out. Maiden go on tour. Brave New World comes out to considerable fanfare, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we were both very positive about it.
Yes. Some more positive than others.
Yeah, well, it's always me who's always more positive about it. But
I made it sound like you were not positive, but it was me.
Yeah.
It was great album. It's just not. I don't think it's as good as the mythos around it. But anyway,
well, they go out and tour it. So they start touring June 2000. Beginning in Europe, they go back to the USA, then back to the UK. Controversially, initially, they did rectify this, but they only announced one UK date.
what?
Yeah, but they did rectify that. But the good news from Maiden's point of view is that they are back in arenas again.
Yeah. Okay.
Which
It was
is
quite a step up from the Blaze days.
quite a step up. But Bruce's
Blaze.
take on this, like, there's a really good quote from Bruce about why they weren't doing some 20-date UK tour, and it's worth noting because there's a little Wales mention in here. So Bruce says everybody in the band would like to do a 30-date tour of 1.5 to 2,000 seaters.
Yeah.
But we've got a tour booked in Europe this summer, and we'll be playing to over 2 million people in 2 months. Newbridge Memorial Hall will have to wait for a while. Now, Newbridge Memorial Hall is in the valleys, so I was like, hey.
That's a very oddly specific reference.
I presume Maiden must have played there back in Number of the Beast days or something.
Yeah.
Because you're not plucking that out of a hat, aren't you? This random, like little mining
It's
village.
just such an odd thing to choose. But yeah.
But they did add other UK dates, so they played Glasgow, Manchester, Birmingham, and then the tour concluded. And I think this is really cool. So the first date they announced was like a big London date. I forget, it might have been, I think it was like Earl's Court when that
Probably
was
would have
a thing.
been Earl's Court back then.
Yeah.
Because that's where, not jumping ahead too much, but that's where the Dance of Death date for London is, Earl's Court.
Indeed, yeah. But then they announced a run of small London dates, including 2 nights at the Shepherd's Bush Empire
Oh, wow.
and then 3 nights at the Brixton Academy.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
That is fun.
Imagine seeing Maiden at the
I
Brixton
know.
Academy.
Yeah.
Which, for my money, is one of the best venues out there simply because of its sloped floor.
Yeah.
As a short person, being able to stand near the back and not have to peer over people's heads is great.
I mean,
All floors should be on a gradient.
I've only been there once. That time we both went to see Mastodon. But it's a very cool venue.
Well, it's also quite easy to get to the front, as we did with Mastodon.
indeed, yeah.
As I've done for like Halloween and Danzig. It's a great venue.
So, not surprisingly of Maiden, the new album's very heavily represented in the set list. So, the songs they're playing, Wicker Man, Ghost of the Navigator, Dream of Mirrors, quite an interesting call. But I like that. The Mercenary,
Yeah.
Blood Brothers,
Banger.
and the title track
Yeah.
all get played. Then a very few select.
That's like 40 minutes worth of music already.
Yeah. And then a few dates also got Fallen Angel. And a couple of times they played Out of the Silent Planet as well.
Should play that more. I love that song. That is one of the best songs on the album.
Yeah. And I don't get. Clearly, I guess.
And it was a single. Yeah. Right?
I guess it sort of felt like a bit of an afterthought single. Okay. But it was a single. I guess maybe it just didn't gel live because I feel like if Maiden had pushed that live more.
Yeah.
Out of the Silent Planet could have been, kind of one of those songs they could drop in. Whereas now, if they dropped it in the set list, people would be like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's weird. But it sort of feels like, they didn't really give that song the push it.
Yeah.
It is a really good song.
That's a shame.
Sadly for you, Sam, they weren't really playing Run to the Hills in this tour. They only played it. Yeah. Because I know this is a bit of a bugbear of yours that you had to wait a long time till you got to see Maiden play Run to the Hills.
Yeah, and we'll probably come on to it more in future episodes. But I just think it's like Judas Priest not playing Breaking the Law, you know?
Yeah.
Which I think Halford would say was sacrilege.
But, Maiden, like, they're a bit contrary, aren't they? They kind of...
They are.
And also, to be fair to them, they've got themselves... Because I've seen Maiden quite a few times where they've not played Run to the Hills. And the problem is if you keep on giving it to people, it becomes your smoke in the water, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, it is in some respects the song, their defining song that everyone knows, but they can get away with it. Like a Priest couldn't get away with not playing Breaking the Law.
No.
They couldn't. People would,
I get you, but I think that is partially just because of Maiden have forced it to be that way.
Yeah.
Right.
That's exactly
sort of
the same point I'm
respectful.
making.
And having seen Maiden, I don't know, like 6 or 7 times nowadays, it's not an issue. I've seen Run to the Hills plenty.
Yeah.
But it took like 4 times to see them.
Yeah, if it's your one shot at Maiden, I guess it's disappointing, yeah. So who do you think was supporting Maiden on their European tour? Okay. And there's a really interesting contrast
2000, cusp of new metal, but also...
I wouldn't go down that road.
Okay. Okay. Is it going to be... Can I have any kind of clue?
Okay, one of these bands has come up before.
That is not a clue, is it?
Right, but
the amount of stupid bands we discussed.
Yeah, I know, but it's one of Steve Harris's little...
Oh, what, like Dirty Deeds?
Yes, Dirty Deeds.
Why?
They're still there, still knocking about.
Okay.
But some of the other support is great, actually. Slayer.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Entombed.
Wow.
Yes. Entombed supported in the UK as well. I think it might have been Entombed and Slayer in the UK support show. It was definitely Entombed. Yeah.
I mean, that is a great bill.
And I mean, for my money, it's still great because then they also took the Almighty out of them.
Wow. Okay.
I wasn't even sure the Almighty was still going in 2000, but
I don't know. You would know.
Happy to see the Almighty whenever. And this is a really left field choice. Spiritual Beggars.
That feels less left field than Entombed.
Yeah, but they're a tiny band to be opening for Maiden.
Yeah. Although I think they were quite big in Europe for a little bit.
Yeah, they might have had a moment.
I mean, like it was. Yeah, I know because who's in that? Michael Amott.
Yeah, it's Michael Amott's 70s retro rock band, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
I mean, I love Spiritual Beggars.
Yeah, they're good.
Great.
Yeah,
but that tonally makes much more sense than Entombed.
Yeah. But what I think's interesting is that
is cool.
That they are bringing out some, Slayer, Entombed kind of bands who were, in 2000 still pretty contemporary. Well, so Entombed in particular, like a 90s band, right?
Yeah, Slayer were not contemporary.
No, they weren't contemporary, no. But Entombed are.
But Entombed, yeah, like
the Almighty are to an extent, really.
The Almighty, yeah. But I mean,
the first Almighty album comes out 89, I think, or 90.
But I think at this point, like we've discussed before, a decade is far longer a period of time than it feels nowadays.
Yeah.
Like Maiden will be called a dinosaur band after a decade, right? So the Almighty don't feel contemporary to me. Entombed do, because Wolverine Blues is what, like 97, 98?
Yeah.
It's only a few years since them sort of taking off.
But it's interesting that the support in the USA comes from Halford, of course, not back in Priest at this point, and Queensryche. So the American tour very much leaning into an 80s vibe, which is kind of interesting. It seems like they're kind of giving the American market what
they want,
which is they kind of see Maiden more as a retro nostalgia.
That's fair.
Act, and we're going to package you with a bunch of other bands who we associate with.
And this is Halford solo rather than say Fight.
Yeah, this is Halford, probably around the Resurrection era, which is his album he did
where
before
he's
he's dead.
just basically trying to be priest.
Good album, though.
Yeah.
But I guess the high point of this tour is the Rock in Rio 3 performance.
Yeah.
Do you know some of the... So Maiden are one of the headliners. Do you know some of the other bands who performed?
No. Wait, Guns N' Roses?
Yes, whoever was in Guns N' Roses in 2000.
Well, so that would have been the resurgence of Guns N' Roses after, like, everyone had quit. So that would have been one of their first big high-profile gigs.
Is that with Buckethead?
So that would be with Buckethead. It'll be Robin Thicke from Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
It'll be the guy who's still in it, Richard Fortus.
Oh, yeah.
The third guitarist who...
Dizzy Reed,
Dizzy Reed will be in that lineup. Yeah. And then I guess on drums, I don't know. And on bass, Tommy Stinson from The Replacements, I think it is.
The guy who threw a little bit of a hissy fit when we saw him at Download in 2006.
Yeah. But I mean, it would be pretty much the lineup we saw at 2006, except with Buckethead instead of Ron Tile Bumberfoot.
So they're there for Guns N' Roses, but the rest of the lineup, I mean, it's such what an odd festival, because you've also got Neil Young,
sure, okay,
NSYNC, REM, and Sting.
That is not very rock.
No, it's not very rock at all. And it's okay. It's a lot of big hitters, but But I think the days were slightly themed, right? So Maiden perform on the same day as Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay.
And the only other notable, the only reason I noted that is because that was the day, was on that stage that Nick Oliveri, their then bass player, was arrested afterwards for playing part of the set naked.
Oh.
Good times. Seems a bit... He's got a bass covering his dignity. I mean, it's not that bad, is it? Yeah. It's all right. But... yeah, so it's a 10-day festival.
Wow.
It's too long. I presume most people aren't going for all 10 days.
That would be unhinged.
But across the 10 days, 1.38 million people attended.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's estimated that Maiden played to about 250,000 people.
That's incredible.
Which is the second largest crowd they've ever played to, I believe, after the first Rock in Rio they did.
I mean, just the scale of gigs in South America puts Europe to shame.
I mean...
we got 70,000 at our festival? Really? Well, hold my beer.
Yeah. If you're at the back of a crowd of 250,000 people, I mean, can you even see the stage?
You're just in a different city.
Yeah, you are. You really are. I mean, how good
you're on the outskirts of that town, for sure.
I mean, that just sounds absolutely bonkers to me. But yeah, the Brave New World tour is, again, sort of seems to be a return to the kind of bigger productions of the 1980s. Yeah. So you've got the Wicker Man on stage. All of this, of course, is documented in the Rock in Rio live DVD and album, which was both of which are big things for me, that Rock in Rio live DVD. That was probably the first live footage of Maiden I ever saw.
Yeah, and I remember a lot of clips on that also like appeared on Scuzz and Krang quite regularly. So it was a lot of our age group's exposure to the band.
Yeah, reliably, there was a live clip of the Trooper from Rock in Rio that did the rounds on Scuzz all the time.
There's also, am I right in saying Eddie the Great comes out around this time? Edward the Great?
Yes.
Because the Fear of the Dark on that is live.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's from Rock in Rio.
Yeah, it'd be like slightly after, 2000, it's sort of just before Dance. Yeah, 2003, yeah.
Yeah, so again, more exposure from that gig for our age group.
But you
because of that Edward the Great compilation, I'm always used to hearing Fear of the Dark, always thinking it should be faster when I listen to the studio version.
Yeah. But you can see how tight they were then.
Oh, yeah.
They were.
Yeah.
Everyone is like sounding so good. And you tend to forget because, like you said, at the time, even in 2001, 2, they were perceived as something of a legacy band.
Yeah.
They were only in their 40s. You know, they weren't, like, you know, as someone who's, well, both
not
of us.
Not very far off.
No, we are quickly hurtling towards the 40 mark.
And what have we achieved?
Wow.
Nothing. A podcast about a band of people who in their 40s were running laps around us.
Do 250,000 people listen to this podcast, Sam?
No.
Oh, well.
Not even sure 250 listened to it.
But yeah, so like, yeah, I think they really were genuinely phenomenally tight on it band at that point. Did you ever watch the bonus features of the Rock in Rio DVD?
I don't think I've even watched the whole Rock in Rio DVD.
I need to sort that out. I need to dig that out.
Yeah.
That's a fun night.
It'll be a lot of Brave New World, though.
Yes, and Brave New World's great, Sam.
Yeah, I know, but I'm not sure how much of it I want to see live.
And actually, it's a Maiden live DVD it's actually well edited.
Oh, okay.
It's not like some of them.
That's almost worth price of admission. Already.
Yeah, and the bonuses are great because you get a little vignette of... They're almost like these little VTs of the guys in Maiden on their days off.
I have seen the bonus features because
great.
you made me watch them as like a 16-year-old. Like Adrian goes fishing. Yannick plays football.
Oh,
or something.
Yannick just goes to the pub.
Oh, yeah.
that's his like recreation. He likes to find an Irish bar in whatever city he's in, and it's just Yannick sitting by himself having a pint.
That might be the most English thing I've ever heard. Oh, I'm in a foreign country. What I'm going to do is find an Irish bar and have a Guinness.
But Bruce goes fencing, and Dave and Nico go playing golf, and Steve goes off and plays football.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just think...
They know what they like.
It looks great. Like, I remember vividly watching that at the time thinking, wow, these guys are just living... This is the best life. Imagine
Not
just playing...
one of them samples Brazilian culture, then.
Yeah, no.
At least, like, go get some delicious steak.
Nah. I mean, Yannick gets a pint of Guinness in South America. Why not? But yeah, so the Brave New World tour wraps up January 2001.
Yeah.
And so then January 2002, I should say. So then by late in that year, they start writing material for their next studio album. So 7 songs are already written by the time they get to the studio, but they write 4 more in the studio as well. So according to Steve, he says they allowed themselves 6 weeks to write the album.
Okay.
Before they went into the studio, which is almost like a return to those old episodes we used to do, isn't it? Where they packed off to the Channel Islands and they had to sort of like just thrash out an album.
And get very drunk.
Yes. But by the time we get to January 2003, they begin work on the album that would come to be Dance of Death. They're back in London.
Nice.
At Psalm West Studios with Kevin Shirley again. So he's clearly... You know, well, Maiden, they do like to pick their man, don't they? Like Martin Birch. It's like they get their guy and they're like, right, you're our guy now.
They're not one for experimentation in some ways.
No.
Like they kind of, they get something they're comfortable with and they beat it into the ground.
Yeah, tune in like a 3 or 4 episodes time and we'll see how that relationship's panning out. But this is the first album they've recorded in the winter in England since Number of the Beast.
Wow.
But the Number of the Beast thing is going to come up again because, fast forwarding a little bit here, but you know, I remember I was buying Metal Hammer and Kerrang. Like any magazine that Maiden appeared on the cover of around in the run up to this record, I was buying it. And there were a lot of what I presume were probably feeders from the Maiden camp.
Yeah.
That were a bit like, oh, it's kind of back to the darker atmosphere of Number of the Beast. It was the first album we've recorded in the winter in England since Number of the Beast. It felt like there was a sort of...
There's a PR person dropping some very calculated sound bites.
Yeah, it felt this is the angle. But we may as well talk about this now. But I think it's kind of interesting when Brave New World, that story sells itself, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a comeback album. You don't have to call it a reunion album if you don't want to, but it's a comeback album.
Sure.
There is inevitably press interest and hype.
Yeah, it's a natural thing to...
But when you've got the follow-up, you can't spin that story again, right? Because people are like, oh, well, this is just what we accept as Iron Maiden now.
Yeah.
And you see it with a lot of bands, you know, particularly bands who reform. There's the initial hype, the initial interest, a lot of fuss for the first album they put out together.
Yeah.
Very difficult often to sustain that momentum going forward because you just become like, oh, well, yeah, we know you're back now. But
it's quite an interesting PR angle choice for Maiden, considering how anti-nostalgia they are, to be kind of framing something as, oh, it's going back to Number of the Beast. You know, that album that everyone loves from 20 years ago.
I don't put words in Maiden's mouth.
Please buy it.
But
I mean, I doubt Steve Harris is coming up with this stuff. I assume it's Rod and whatever PR agency they work with, because that is how you sell stuff. But yeah, it is sort of antithetical to what Maiden say a lot of the time.
Yeah, and it was almost never explicitly said it came from the Maiden camp. It was just this weird thing that kept popping up in the press a lot, as if this is sort of like a press release or something.
If that kind of tone keeps popping up a lot, it will definitely be a deliberate PR seed.
Yeah. But yeah, so
that's 15 years of marketing experience just dropping in there for you.
The man knows. So returning to the recording of the album, again, Shirley does his usual. We record the band playing together.
Yep.
We're going for a live feel. So, we're not laying down individual tracks here. We all record in a room together. Then Shirley edits different live recordings to create an individual track.
Okay.
Now, I'm not nerdy enough, a kind of music producery type person to be able to do this. But I know some people who get really into this. If you want to disappear down a Reddit thread, there are people who really analyse where they go, on Montague and Dance to Death, you can see he's really clipped together these two versions and they don't work. I mean, I can't hear that personally, but I'm not necessarily looking for it.
So I had never heard that. So Blev will know that I did this out of, I don't know, some weird nerdy desire to get my paws on Dance of Death. I have made my own version of Dance of Death, where I edited some songs, lengths and track listings, just as like a fun little exercise.
Are we allowed to share that with people, or legally can we not do that?
We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll see what we can do. Maybe
we'll run it past the lawyers and Maiden Voices lawyers.
But yeah, basically I had to play around with Dance of Death to kind of trim some of the song lengths and to rejig the track listing to something that very subjectively I think works better. But as I was doing that, I was listening pretty forensically to a few songs, and more so, I'd never noticed it before, but when you're kind of in the weeds of the songs, you can tell where stuff is stitched together much more. Like, I noticed it on a few songs. I was like, oh, that's the kind of bad editing that I do when I make music.
But like when you make music, you use a click track, right? Which for most bands gives you consistency to do that. And Maiden are always very vocal about we don't use a click track. So it must be very hard for Shirley.
Yeah.
But I presume also Shirley's the one who's saying, no, don't use a click track. I want to keep a live feel. But it sort of feels like if you're going to do that, you either have to go, right, it's a live feel, it's warts and all. Yeah. We can maybe dub the odd thing here or there. But to then sort of stitch together different live takes to create songs seems, without a click, keeping consistent timing each take, that sounds like a real nightmare of a task.
I think it's hard, but then at the same time, Maiden are a very tight band that I think there's probably not a huge amount of variance a lot of the time.
Yeah,
so it's more doable than it might be for, say, some other bands. But I think it's also important that, like, I've been listening to this album for 20 years and I'd never noticed it until I was literally just trying to edit some tracks.
And we'll get there when we get there, but I don't have any complaints.
I think it all works really well in context. It's only if you're like looking at it with a magnifying glass, you can spot a few bits where it's like, oh yeah, that's a stitch.
But yeah, most of this information, by the way, is gleaned from the sort of the Death on the Road documentary.
Not from Mick Wall.
Not this from Mick Wall. No, I had to watch that Death on the Road documentary again, which as a Maiden fan, I love just hearing anyone Maiden talking. But objectively,
it is not good.
Well, it's just quite dry if you...
it's very much...
It's not some kind of monster, is it?
No. It is a busman's holiday of a documentary.
But the one quote I picked out of it I think is quite telling, which is from Kevin Shirley. Steve Harris is the boss. Right?
Well,
so I think it's anytime we talk about something that Kevin Shirley does, I think it's interesting to think about who's really the puppet master.
Who's pulling the strings.
And I believe he is. Steve Harris has been credited as a co-producer or an assistant producer on every 21st century Maiden record, right? So, yes, but more on that later. But when it comes to the songwriting approach, I think even compared to Brave New World, this seems like a very collaborative album.
Yeah.
In terms of the different groupings you've got as well. So you've got Adrian writing with Steve, which he wasn't really doing on Brave New World. Yannick's writing with Steve. Bruce is writing with Adrian and Steve, and you've even got the other talking point was it's Nicky McBrain's first writing credit in Iron Maiden.
Yeah, which is surprising it's taken so long.
Yeah.
But also, jumping back a bit, Adrian and Steve as a songwriting combo, that doesn't tend to happen very
No,
much.
it doesn't happen
ever.
Barely happens at all in the 80s. I'm really struggling to...
Like Adrian and Bruce happens quite a lot.
Yeah.
And then Adrian and Steve are usually quite separate.
And even on Brave New World, you've got Wicker Man. Oh, Wicker Man, I think, is...
Sometimes there's the three of them as well, like Bruce, Adrian, Steve.
But yeah, it seems like on Dance of Death, that new partnership of Adrian and Steve is like quite an interesting development.
Well, it gives you Passchendaele. So.
Well, yeah. And there's only one song on this record that's credited to a single member of the band.
Oh.
So No More Lies is solely credited to Steve Harris. Every other song is some kind of combination or partnership.
That's interesting. So that is much more collaborative than usual.
Yeah, very collaborative. So yeah, they record the album and they get that in the can. But shortly before the album's release, the band embark on the Give Me Ed Till I'm Dead tour.
Awful name.
Not great. Not great. So it's summer 2003, and
But also, why tour at this point?
Well, it's just the summer, isn't it? They've probably got some offers
so it's
in.
like a festival circuit.
Yeah, it's just like a Metallica escape from the studio style tour, I guess.
Okay.
And they basically go on a short greatest hits tour in the summer, but they also headline the first Download in 2003. And this must have been the one, if you've listened to our Serena Cherry interview, which if you haven't listened to, do, because it's great. And I say that not because Serena Cherry's a very interesting person, rather than
it's a good episode. All our episodes are good. Listen to them all.
But in my head, the first Download was earlier.
Yeah,
2003.
But it was Ozfest before that, wasn't it?
Yeah, there's something. But yeah, this must be the one that Serena was talking about being at. So I thought, as a little bit of context setting here to gauge the metal landscape of 2003, do you know some of the other acts that played on Download 2003? So by the way, it was only a 2-day festival then.
Okay.
So it's a smaller affair than the one we are used to.
I don't know. System of a Down, maybe.
Good guess, but no.
like low on the bill. No. Well, no, actually, Toxicity would have been out. So,
and as you're saying this now, the poster I've got up to look is quite low resolution. So before I,
am I just guessing anywhere on the card?
Yeah, anywhere on the card. Yeah.
Okay, Static X.
Oh, no, that might be a shout. Let's have a quick look. Lots of bands that begin with S. Oh, you're so close in the kind of new metal bands that begin with S, but not Static
Slipknot.
X. I can see. No, not
Murder Dolls.
big. Yes, Murder Dolls are on there.
Murder Dolls.
On the same day as Maiden as well, on the main stage, yeah.
I have a soft spot for Murder Dolls.
Yeah, I quite like
They're quite
Murder
fun. Korn.
Nope. It's kind of interesting, right? Just
who else is headlining it? Metallica? Was it Metallica?
Now,
the other
this
headliner?
was interesting because so Maiden headline.
Oh, no, next year Metallica are headlining because that's the year where Lars is ill and
this
stuff.
is 2003 is the Metallica secret set year.
Oh,
So it's where they show up on the what was then the Scuzz stage.
yeah.
To play a secret set about halfway through the second day.
Wow.
It's not Maiden Day. They clashed with Evanescence apparently, and so people who were there
Evanescence, of course.
talk about a sea of people as the news filtered through, just running away from Evanescence. Poor Evanescence.
Brutal.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Okay, who else is on the bill?
So, the Maiden Day, you got Maiden headlining. Underneath them, we've got Marilyn Manson. Yeah.
Whoa.
I mean, he's back. He's playing Cardiff this year. So
That's messed up. I'm like putting on the record. Don't book that man.
no, don't do that. I mean, you can't blame Della in 2003 though.
No, I guess not.
I mean, they're fairly all right.
Yeah.
Deftones, you can expect that.
Yeah.
Ministry, In Me, very high up the bill. Remember In Me?
Yeah.
I saw the guy from In Me did an acoustic set opening for Andy Cairns at the Globe in Cardiff. He's a very good acoustic. He sort of repositioned himself like an acoustic singer-songwriter guy. But very high up the bill. Above Murder Dolls.
I've seen the guy from In Me do an acoustic set.
Yeah.
Opening for Devon Townsend doing an acoustic set. And I don't even know what In Me sound like.
I mean, kind of alt metal, new metal. Very noise. They're all right there. So you've also got A Very Young Funeral for a Friend.
Yeah.
Who will come up as Maiden supports in the next episode. Well, no, the episode after the next episode. And then on the Scuzz stage, headlined by A.
A.
Yeah, it's
A, like I can see the fiery little A logo in my head. I have no idea who A are.
Do you remember Nothing? Nothing was big.
No.
They were almost like a Brit rock band, eh? Do you remember? Give me some love, give me some skin.
Nope.
We ain't got much, but we ain't got... You're going to leave that in, aren't you?
Nope. I'm not editing that out.
But
Thank you for that beautiful thing.
Everyone else will be going, oh my God, A. But you've also got like Sepultura,
Yeah.
Him, quite low down the Scuzz stage, but also some of the Brit rock bands.
Oh man, that would have been him around Love Metal as well.
Yeah.
I mean, for anyone who does know, I'm weirdly quite a big him fan. I think they are
But right down,
fantastic.
this is such a bizarre stage because right down the bottom of it, you've got Arch Enemy of the
Off
second
the
stage.
back of Anthems of... No, maybe it's still Wages of
Just
Sin.
Sin, probably, yeah. But then above them, or a bit above them, you've got Three Colours Red. Still knocking around in 2003 when I thought they weren't a thing. And so the Sunday was Limp Bizkit were meant to headline the main stage.
Right.
But they pulled out. So the sub-headliners Audioslave were bumped up to the top slot.
Yeah.
And then a few other things. You've got like a Very Young Darkness very low down the bill on the main stage just before
they became
on the
huge.
cusp of becoming massive.
Yeah.
Metallica Secret Set, Scuzz stage headlined by NoFX. So you just sort of see,
NoFX.
how metal and rock was at a very weird place in 2003. Because there were lots of things kind of fizzling out, right? New metal is kind of about to implode and kind of it's on the other side of the hill. Pop punk, this is still pre-American Idiot, so that again seems like it's on the down.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is of all those bands I've mentioned, there's nothing akin to Iron Maiden.
No.
Like weirdly, Arch Enemy are probably the closest band on the bill, right? And they are a melodic death metal band, really.
Yeah. Not really, they are.
Well, they are.
They do have quite a big Iron Maiden influence, though. They've got an Aces High cover.
Yeah, they do. But Maiden are still, by the time Trivium and those bands come round, Maiden no longer seem such an outlier because twin guitar harmonies are back, solos are back. Whereas, it's interesting to see that in 2003, there's a lot of love for Maiden, but they don't really fit in anywhere. It seems like a bit of a transitional year.
It's a bit anachronistic.
Yeah, definitely. So they do that tour, and then really by the end of the summer, Dance of Death comes out on the 8th of September 2003. And the only other thing worth noting is that also that summer, we get the Visions of the Beast DVD that I eagerly bought when it came out. And for me, that Visions of the Beast DVD, I think it was the first time I heard Diana era Maiden.
Oh, okay.
DVD.
Yeah.
First time I heard Blaze era Maiden.
Yeah.
It was quite an important, as rubbish as most of those music videos are, the music on it was quite an important part of my journey of discovery when it came to
It's quite interesting that at that point you're already quite voraciously consuming everything you can Maiden.
Yeah.
You hadn't heard Diano or Blaze stuff.
Well, because it was just what was available, right? If I'd have seen a copy of, the self-titled album in the CD shop, I'd have bought it, but it wasn't there. So you buy the Visions of the Beast DVD because that is there because it's new. And
this makes us sound decrepitly old at this point, but it's really interesting thinking back to then, mighty 2003 discovering music, where actually, sure, you could download MP3s off the internet with your LimeWires and your Napsters and your Kazars or whatever illegal program.
The thing is,
thing you wanted to use, but it wasn't as readily accessible.
And also, I couldn't really because I still had dial-up internet.
Yeah,
and was in a boarding house. But let's not go into that.
that's a whole other podcast.
Before all of a sudden everyone turns against us, it's like, we're not Tories. I promise, we are not Tories.
We're really not. We were misfits.
Yeah,
but like it's pre-YouTube, it's pre-easily discovering music via the internet. You can find bits and pieces, but firstly, also, if you were downloading music off the internet in those days, everything was mislabeled and inaccurate, and you would download something that was meant to be Twisted Sister, but it was Quiet Riot, and you'd be very disappointed.
A friend of mine discovered the quite obscure niche, but excellent German traditional metal band Gravedigger.
Yeah.
The song Excalibur, when it was labelled on like LimeWire as a Metallica song. Which would be a great bit of marketing for Gravedigger if they just like put that on there but labelled it as like Excalibur by Metallica.
Yeah. Every song that was a cover that had extreme vocals was labelled Cradle of Filth, even if it wasn't Cradle of Filth. But yeah, it was much more limited in terms of how much there was to easily discover. Like nowadays, you would just go on Spotify, check out the top tracks of stuff, and like, you might hear a Diana.
You've got a full discography right there for you in order, like
instantly. You don't have to wait 20 minutes to download one MP3.
I mean, to be honest, until I bought the Visions of the Beast DVD, I might not have been aware of the Paul Diano era. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what, when I bought the Run to the Hills book or... but yeah, that's the sort of the way things were. So before we get on to the track list to bring the first episode to an end, we need to talk about the artwork.
So that's a pretty brief history compared to normal.
Well, it is a brief history, but what else is there to say?
Is it because you've run out of the Mick Wall?
No, it's
got mixed
what more do you want from me? I told you about the tour.
No,
I told you about the
but I think that is sort of indicative of like how, and we've had this at previous points in the band's discography, but how we kind of, there's much less of note in terms of the recording process. Like things are starting to settle into a habitual pattern.
That's it. Spoiler, there's not going to be any upheavals in lineup to discuss going forward.
Until 2024.
Yeah, until 2024. The shock departure, not really. And even then, how long do we need to spend addressing that when it all seems very amicable?
We've already addressed it as well.
Yeah, and this is a band now who have, from this point on, they develop a set way of working. Yeah. This is almost like me saying, don't bother listening to the next episode. But we
still have opinions.
Thing. They write some songs, they hang out with Kevin Shirley, they record the songs, they go on tour, the album comes out, big whoop. Yeah. Right?
And that's the end of the podcast, folks. Whole series done. Just swap out the word Dance of Death for any other album. We're done.
But if you think it's going to be dry and boring, I can't believe it's not come up so far, because we've not mentioned the artwork to Dance of Death. And I was talking to people at that noise festival that we discussed off mic, and I mentioned that we were going to be doing this about Dance of Death. And the first thing someone said to me was, wow, that artwork. So, before I get your take on it, Sam, Maiden branch out and get a new art collaborator. Yeah. So David Pratchett, who's most famous for his work with the
Cathedral.
Excellent, metal band Cathedral, and does some absolutely stellar artwork for Cathedral. Some of the most distinctive and interesting artwork there's ever graced metal album.
I mean, if you're not a Cathedral fan or unfamiliar with them, just Google image search their album artworks. It's all sort of Hieronymus Bosch style, surreal fantasy stuff. It's incredible.
It seems to have lots of... I don't know anything about art. It's not. Is it tessellated, the word I'm looking for? It all seems to be like lots of intricate pieces.
Yeah. They're sort of like visual puzzles in some ways. Yeah. They're fantastic and really distinctive.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
But the story that most people are familiar with is basically what happened is the band used an unfinished design that Pratchett had not signed off on.
Yeah.
But Bruce says this freely in his book, that Pratchett then, learning this, asks for his name to be removed from the credits. He doesn't want his name associated with this. And Rod Smallwood, just to add insult to injury, then decides to ask someone who works for IronMaiden.com to add some extra figures to the background. And I say some extra figures. I mean, we're looking at about 15 random characters that have been added using what seems like a bit of free software called Poser.
Poser, yeah.
I mean, where do you want to start with the Dance of Death artwork, Sam? I mean, I looked at it again today. It's that baby in a bikini on a dog that haunts my dreams.
Yeah,
so I just
my notes have the baby in it. It's just pathetic. I mean, like...
Yeah, it's awful.
Iron Maiden are, and we've discussed this at length loads of times, yeah, they have a few patchy bits of artwork, but they are a band that has a very strong visual identity. So many people got into Maiden off the back of just seeing a cool album artwork and thinking, that looks sick, I'm going to buy that album. So for them to phone it in like this is...
It's not even phoning it.
Well, yeah, okay.
You
just
could phone in something that would be all right. I mean...
Yeah. I mean, it is a terrible cover, and everyone knows that. I think like you said, Bruce admits it, but I think Maiden camp as a whole have to admit
Although
nowadays.
he didn't admit it at the time. I again, this is me paraphrasing, a citation needed type quote. But I remember him defending it at the time and saying that, people just don't get it. Whereas when you read his autobiography, he's clearly rode back from that position. But it's conceptually Grim Reaper Eddie. Okay, it's not like, that's cool, great. I'm just amazed they made it to 2003 and not thought of that idea.
Yeah,
but great. That's
Dance of Death makes sense.
Dance of Death, yeah.
You reference the Dance Macabre
quite
imagery, have some dancing
to be veined.
Weirdness.
And even if you look at, what seems to be Pratchett's unfinished, like his basic blueprint of what he thinks it's going to look like,
which is Eddie in the middle and like
the robed monks in the background and the floor plan.
Yeah.
As an unfinished edit, it's fine.
Pretty strong. It's a bit empty,
it's a bit
but
early,
it's good.
It's also a bit early noughties in terms of the computer generation, right? But again, from what I gather, that's not his finished version. So
no, I think, and like I've touched on this before, I think it's a really good indication again of how divorced from technology Maiden are.
Yeah.
And like this is the kind of thing that makes them seem like a dinosaur band to me. Like you look at Ed Hunter, you look at the CG stuff that they've experimented with in the past. I mean, to be fair, those all look like masterpieces compared to the Dance of Death cover. But for Steve Harris to look at that cover and think, that is top notch.
Yeah.
It's like in 2003, that looked pathetic.
Yeah.
Like that.
And everyone said so at the time. Like,
that was early 90s CGI at best. It's just appalling. Like you look at
just the way they're placed and arranged.
Yeah, you look at the baby on the dog and there's no sense of, positioning and depth to any of it. Everything's kind of a flat image on top of each other despite being 3D models. There's no shadows. There's no sense of, like perspective. It's just this horrendous collection of unnaturally smooth mannequins wearing masks. And it's, I mean, in some ways, that's the creepiest thing of all. Yeah. So maybe that's what they were going for, like this unhinged, uncanny valley
sort of CGI nudie woman, which doesn't seem very on brand for Maiden either.
No. And then also, the quality of Eddie is so much higher than everything around him. So you get this really like incongruent scene of, oh, look, there's a finished Eddie and some unrendered models around him.
I mean, we could just kind of keep going about how terrible it is forever, but it is just terrible, isn't it?
I think the thing that blows my mind is someone on the ironmaiden.com forum just adding the rest of the characters in poser.
Yeah.
And like Maiden thinking, that's a good way to source artwork.
And that's it, because it's presumably, I mean, unless Steve really is the dictator that some people portray him to be, there are multiple people involved in getting this out, released, packaged, distribution, production. Did no one at no point go, what the hell is that? You can't put that in a shop.
Just like, that will look awful.
Yeah, this is terrible. Did nobody at any point
it is the new millennium
raise, even if it was, it's just graphically, just basic layout and composition. As one of the things I teach is media studies, is, and the kids have to design their own posters for DVD covers and like stuff like that. And I would just look at, if they produced that, I would go, what on earth are you doing? This is just a mess.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't pass GCSE media studies. Right? It honestly wouldn't. As a concept, you would look at it and go, this is terrible. And this is a band signed to a major record label.
Yeah. I was looking at some of the reception to the album cover, like more contemporary reception, and I found this great quote from louder.com, which is, the astonishingly bad cover art looks like somebody on a 6-day bath salts binge broke into a department store and set up an orgy of mannequins wearing animal masks from the Halloween aisle. I was like, that's about right.
Although actually, as a concept, that sounds quite interesting. It's just almost like,
I mean, at least that might have some rendered artwork in it.
And, well, in the next episode, we'll go on to discuss the music, but You wondered...
At least it's a lot better than the artwork.
Well, that's it. But you wondered the extent to which that artwork has cast a shadow over this album that people have not really forgiven it for, which is unfair on the music within. And also, there's another point. In the booklet, the photography of the band...
So much better.
It's amazing. It's actually some of the best photographs are made. Like, it's really tastes kind of interesting photography.
And actually, that's a really good point, because like the photography in the booklet like makes use of the exact same masks that appear on the front cover, but because the masks are owned by some person and they've been used in various films and stuff, like they're a collection of stage props, I think. But it's really interesting seeing those masks on actual humans who are like posed around the band and stuff. It's like, oh, this is what you could have had. Yeah. You could have just done a really cool bit of photography, or you could have...
I mean, photography's not Maiden style for covers though, is it? But,
but then you could have let Pratchett actually do his job properly. So it's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. Well, as a final note, I will get, talking the artwork, probably... I think it's pretty much actually weirdly the rarest vinyl I own is the original double disc, picture disc version of Dance of Death. Wow. Well,
vinyl in 2003.
Well, that's it, right? Yeah, because on Discogs it reliably goes for about, it's because about 200 quid these days. That LP. And I bought it in HMV in about 2005 for about 15 quid, I think.
Did you even have a record player then?
Oh, I did, Sam.
Oh, okay.
Fine. I was,
both living in the past and the future at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I was, kind of retro, but before retro was even retro.
Yeah.
If that
retro before it was cool and trendy and contemporary.
But yeah, I'll stick a picture of that so you can,
that'd be
you can have a look at those nice pictures on the one side of the picture disc and the terrible artwork on the other side, as I remember them.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, before we end the episode, the feature that has no name, what have you been listening to this week?
What have I been listening to this week? Well, as I was telling you before we started recording, I'm very big into a band called Forlorn at the moment.
Yeah.
Who are when I saw them live last week, they're a four-piece.
Yeah.
Female vocalist who has this amazing range. She can go from like a very Kate Bush-esque ethereal type vocal to this really like black metal scream.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's a bit like, it's really hard to explain. It's just like genty riffs, but tonally it's kind of My Dying Bride, Cradle of Filth.
Okay.
With this Kate Bush vocal, and it's all quite pagan-y and witchy.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I will check that out.
So their new album's called Aether.
Yeah.
I presume that's pronounced Aether. What about you, Sam?
More predictably, I've been listening to Ghost's new album. Even though I couldn't make the gig, I still wanted to keep up to date with Ghost. Skeletor.
It's the Skeletor, isn't it? So
I guess Skeletor. It's good. It's not as good as we kind of discussed off air. It's not as good as the previous album, Impera. I just think it's got a few more middling moments to it. But when it is good, the highs are really there. Like the first three tracks are a very strong opening, and then there's lots of good bits everywhere. It's kind of, I guess Impera to me was, the previous album was Def Leppard for goths. Yeah. Right? This is less...
Just Def Leppard.
Well, yeah, except it's both more and less gothic than it was before.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there is less hair metal to it as well. There's a lot more just slow gothy ballads that don't quite land for me.
The good stuff is very good though.
But the good stuff is very good. And like stuff like Lacrima, which was the second single with that really big heavy riff at the beginning, and then just a big Bon Jovi chorus is like, great, this is all I need from music.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Right, so please follow us on the socials, Sam, which are...
we're on Blue Sky at maidenpod.bsky.social. We are still on X for reasons I'm not entirely sure about, at maidenpod. You can email us, maidenvoyagerspod@gmail.com. By the time this goes live, we might be on Instagram at maidenpod. I haven't decided, and I might edit this out if it hasn't happened.
It's fine. You know, it can be a little surprise. People can find out for themselves.
Yeah. I think that's all our socials.
Yeah. Like, subscribe, give us a review or something.
Yeah. Leave us comments.
Review on TripAdvisor. Whatever people do.
Whatever people do.
Airbnb, leave us a review.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, next time, the actual album.
Indeed. Look forward to it.
Bye.
Bye.
Don't wave at me. I'm in the room with you.
Yeah, maybe to the imaginary listener.